Good morning. Well, it's not really that good a morning because obviously, as you can tell from the title, I'm having to do an emergency good morning walk. I'm not even... I tried to see if I could do a good morning short about it, but to be honest, with the time limit of just a minute, you can't talk about it in that time, what is seriously going on this morning. And this has played into, by the way, a lot of what we've been talking about ever since the Tory conference kicked off. And essentially, Liz Truss has made so many of her fellow Tories so angry. Oh, who have we got in? Mecklin, good morning to you. Ingrid, a morning emergency. Indeed it is. Good morning to you. Pretty Bird, greetings and good morning to you as well. Greetings to everyone joining us in the chat. Catho G, good morning to you. Like I say, good morning. So, if you've seen a couple of my videos recently, we've been really hammering in on the fact that the Tories are not happy. Absolutely not happy. And it goes all the way back to this mini budget. And you've seen how the markets have reacted. They've reacted very negatively in this case. Oh, FSM, good morning to you. RC, good morning to you. And good morning to anyone that I've missed. Sneaked in. I'm tripping up all over the gate. Oh, Kavlan, good morning to you. But yes, it all goes back, and I think it will depend on just how angry. Oh, Paul, good morning to you. It will depend today, and I think the events that will unfold are just how angry the Tories get about today's announcement. And if you haven't heard, or if you're just waking up and you haven't heard the news or anything like that already, the Bank of England is having to step in for a second time. And once again, it's all about the gilts. It seems to me that a lot of people are really worried about our debt, which is kind of funny because we've got a chancellor and a prime minister who have basically continued to say for quite some time since they came into office that they ain't worried about their debt. And indeed, this meshes and mixes with this libertarian ideology that they do not care if there is a crash, because as far as they're concerned, if there is a crash, the company that survives, well, they're clearly strong and meant to survive, but if not, well, they deserved it, essentially. Morning emergency. It's a sign that the Tories are losing their power. Yeah, very true. Very true. Kersey needs to be sacked and the budget cancelled. Well, we'll have to see what happens today. If you saw my video yesterday, where I was sort of making sort of predictions as to what would happen, and I said at the moment the needle was very much flickering in between the middle case scenario and the worst case scenario. And I think I forgot to mention that really these scenarios are all based on how the Tory party really feels about this situation. And I think, to be honest, they're not going to be very happy. They are not going to be very happy at all, given that the Bank of England has had to intercede for a second time. And we've also got to see economically what these effects are going to be as well. Because if you've had an advanced economy like ours, well, I say advanced, who knows how advanced it is probably at this moment in time. If you've got an economy like ours, where it's had to have its main institution, intercede at least twice, then these aren't good signs. These are not economically good signs that, well, good things are ahead. So, morning.
Morning.
So, imagine for a second if the Fed, the Federal Reserve, sort of a very similar sort of institution to the Bank of England. It's not a one-to-one comparison, of course, but imagine if they had to go and say, we're sorry, Mr. Biden, but your economic policy is so damaging, bearing in mind it hasn't been implemented yet. This is the kicker. None of the mini budget has actually been implemented yet. It's got to go down to a vote. And you've got the Chancellor giving us all what we are presuming will be some sort of Halloween treat with his medium-term budget. And think on this, but for a second. If the Chancellor's mini-budget has been received so badly, if the markets are reacting this badly to a mini-budget, just how badly will the markets actually react to a medium-term budget from this Chancellor who's already caused huge economic turmoil from just announcing the stuff that he was going to do? Not even implemented yet, just announcing what he was going to do. And luckily, it seems that this time they've tried to get the OBR on board, because that seemed to be, or what at least seems to be to them, the reason why the markets reacted so badly. But we've already had rumours and another report that's also come out today, we'll get into that in a bit, that the OBR have said that there is at least a £60 billion hole could be put in the UK government finances if they go ahead with this mini budget. Just what is going on? And then we get to this report that came out today that said if the Chancellor does decide to go ahead with his mini budget, then guess what? We're going to see extreme austerity. I kid you not, that was the phrase they used. Extreme austerity. It's like the 90s came back, died, and has now been revived as some sort of extreme zombie corpse. Just... Oop. There we go. Could have been John Major could have avoided this disaster. I doubt it. At least, put it this way, John Major would probably be sensible enough as to not actually to implement many of these economic disasters. You know, I think that's the case. It really, really is the case. Extreme 1970s, becoming more like it, yeah. What was the youth slang back then in the 1970s? Oh, but to be honest, you know, I think we are slipping now into that worst case scenario, because I cannot see the Tories being quiet about this. I really cannot see them being quiet about that. Like the 1870s. And the Tories pride themselves on a couple of things. And one of the things they definitely pride themselves on is being seen as the party of, you know, fiscal responsibility, of stability. And that's one thing they have built their entire brand on. You know, we are the party of fiscal responsibility. You know, we're not like, you know, as they always used to say, we're not the party of back when, you know, Cameron was attacking sort of Brown at the time. Oh, we're not the spend party. But here's the thing: Labour had to deal with an economic crisis, you know. And even then, you have reports by economists that have said multiple times that if we had not gone the austerity route, and instead we had actually invested in the country, we wouldn't be in this mess. You know, we wouldn't be here. Ziggy Owl, Salford Superboy, you're correct, and maybe even worse this time. I only exist in this because the 70s forced my dad to emigrate due to the lack of any opportunity in the UK and pre-EU UK membership. Yeah, yeah, Cath OG, and that's the big announcement this week. The Bank of England does plan to buy back the inflation-linked bonds until the end of this week. And the thing is, doing moves like that will cause knock-on effects to the economy. Jennifer, what's the emergency? Essentially, the Bank of England has announced that it's having to have a second intervention in our economy. And that is not good. And they are probably having to do this because, just like last time, it was either believed that big mortgage companies or pension companies was more likely, because pension companies are more linked to these gilt-type bonds, that some of, shall we say, the UK's biggest pension providers were suddenly about to go under, or shall we say, hours away from them going under. And make no mistake, if the Bank of England is doing this type of sell-off and companies own these types of bonds, knowing how potentially toxic it might be just to own one of these bonds, who isn't going to get rid of them? Who is not sitting on these bonds this morning and probably beating their way to the doors of the Bank of England to try and sell their bond this morning? At this point in time, the UK economy is not going to be looking in a good shape. And it's going to be interesting to see how the Tories react to the fact that the bank has had to intercede for a second time. You can't just sit back and just say, oh yes, this is all fine, when it's not. You know, what are you doing? you fools, what are you doing? You know, And I said in my video, and I've said it before today, it entirely depends on how the Tories feel. If they feel that Liz Truss and Kersey are screwing up the economy, expect there to be a lot of very angry Tories probably on the airwaves right now, or if not later today. And then, well, PMQs tomorrow is going to be fun. I think PMQs tomorrow is going to be very, very, very fun on this subject. Hubris unbound, yeah. And there's a lot of... One thing I didn't talk about was maybe for Truss to try and save herself, maybe she gets rid of Katang, maybe she replaces him with someone else. That might be a possibility to at least, keep her in the job. But even then, she is not going to abandon these ideals. Her speech at the Tory conference was very, very clear. She was going to double down on these, these libertarian ideals, and double down on her free market fundamentalist thinking. And unfortunately, from what we know, and at least have heard about Liz Truss in the past, she believes that she's special. You've got to remember, Liz Truss has been in cabinet since the Cameron years. She's survived since then. And she believes that she is somehow special. And how many films, how many books, how many TV programs do you have where you've got a character who believes that they are special, and obviously what ends up happening to them? In many cases, they don't meet that good an end. And I guarantee you now, there are already numbers of Tories who have been circulating the wagons, trying to work out what do they do about Liz Truss. Do they keep her, or do they throw her? Because if they throw her, that means potentially another quite arduous, quite damaging leadership contest. And you've seen what can happen during these leadership contests, just how badly and divided the party became because of the choice between Liz Truss and Kersey Katang. Not Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak, sorry. This is a party that I've continuously said and made the case to you so many times on these walks, that you cannot have a leadership party that is divided this badly and expect it to survive. Theresa Coffey MP. Well, I think there may be even a time where even Theresa Coffey, who, as we've heard, is quite the friend to Liz Truss, I think there may even come a time where even she has to abandon Truss in order to at least maybe save herself. For that, we'll have to see. But yes, expect some fun and games today. Expect some very big fun and games. Are there going to be letters going to the 1922 committee? It's possible. It's possible. Expect some very desperate moves by Truss and Katang. So there's probably going to be some sort of announcement maybe today, just maybe to try and stave off, maybe even calm Tory nerves, the fact that the Bank of England has had to sort of step in. So the more this comes along, the more this happens, there is just an ever increasing chance that the Tories decide we're going to get rid of Liz. And when that happens, the opposition is certainly going to have a field day. Absolutely. They will be calling for an early general election. Make that no mistake. And remember, a couple of times in the past I've said, because I'm a member of the Labour Party, I've had letters from the Labour Party talking up about building an emergency general election fund. So at least they're prepared. They're prepared for any eventuality and prepared to fight if necessary. And like I say, when that comes, I expect us to be delving into the Labour manifesto about what their policies are going to be, and what the impact of those might be. So that'll be fun, talking deep policy. That will be fun. But I cannot stress the fact that what we have had today, this announcement, this second announcement, that they are going to have to get involved again. And if you remember the first time, how many Tories were so angry about the fact that the Bank of England had to be called in and had to take action. Expect today, I think, an explosion of Tory anger. And I think that needle that we talked about in yesterday's video about predictions, what could happen to Liz Truss, I said it was wobbling between the sort of medium and worst case scenario for Liz. Well, it's going to go certainly into the worst case scenario. Why will they call for an early election? Well, certainly the opposition will want to take advantage of this time. You've got a polling situation for Labour which clearly shows them an absolute, complete and utter wipeout. This is like when Theresa May saw her polls, and it showed for her at that general election that she went for in 2017 that she would get an overwhelming majority and an absolute Labour wipeout. But that's not what happened. And like I say, sometimes some general elections can be vastly different. Oh, till the colder. So why would they call for another general election? Well, thank you very much for your super chat there. So, because they've got so much a lead in the polls, there is no way that, Keir Starmer is not going to be calling for an early election. Pretty much every single opposition party is going to be wanting an early election. They've seen the polls, but also so have the Tories. And you are right, the Tories would not want to call an early general election. They would want to at least try and right the ship as much as possible, because they do not want to go back into Well, first of all, they don't want to go back into opposition. That would be even bigger disaster. If you think the party is divided now, watch what happens when it goes into opposition and it starts tearing itself to pieces, because when they're in opposition, there's no goodies to give out. They can't keep all these different factions quiet. And eventually, that will just signal complete and absolute anarchy within the Tory party. You know, different factions will start vying for power, and there will be an almighty row. Smelly weather ponies. Hopefully we shall have some coming up. But yes, I hope that answers your question, Tilly. Vis of the Flowers. I've never really cared for any political party, at least in the sense of getting off my arse and voting for one. If that makes me sound like a goon, then so be it. You should always vote. Always vote, Vase. You know, I'm a massive advocate for always voting. Not only just in general elections, but local elections as well. And I love to bang on about how important local elections really are to sort of your local politics in your local area. So, you know, you're in the right place. I promise you, by the next general election, who knows, which could be next month at this rate, you will be voting, my friend. That is my guarantee. I will get you to vote. By hook or by crook, I will get you to vote. So, yeah, there is a real sense, I think, in the party at the moment, that any general election is probably going to be very, very much a Tory wipeout, because they aren't keeping the red wall. Like, these policies that Liz Truss has put forward, and will probably put forward even more crazy ones in the next Conservative manifesto. But at that point, as we've said before, they're no longer the Conservative Party. Under Liz Truss and certainly Kersey Katang, they have made it the Libertarian Party. There is no way that the red wall is going to vote for any of these proposals. And I am quite shocked that you've got Jake Berry, the guy who is leading like the Northern Research Group. I am sort of very, very shocked that he is supporting Truss on this. I mean, this is the guy who is meant to be leading this coalition of red wall Tories. And yet, I don't think the red wall Tories are on his side, or at least on, you know, Truss's side. It would be insane for them to do this, because they are going to lose their seat. And as we've, again, one of the things that I've constantly talked about since 2019 is that these guys are going to be one-term MPs, because once everyone in the North sees what Boris Johnson was going to do, that levelling up was going to be a complete nonsense, that Brexit was going to ultimately damage the North far more than it would help it. The fact that you've got all these free ports and enterprise zones which aren't really going to help, it's going to be, I think, a an absolute cakewalk for the opposition this time. I really do. And I think an election, I think you're even going to get Tory MPs saying, yeah, I'm out. I'm not I'm not running in this general election. Or start even talking out against the very manifesto that they're meant to be running on. So there's that. So they've lost the red wall. And now what about the blue wall down south? Well, you look back to Chesham and Amersham. What was the big issue that lost the Tories Chesham and Amersham? It wasn't just farmers changing their political allegiance over to the Lib Dems. It was the fact that the rules around planning were changing. And those, the blue wall didn't like those changes. So, in a way, now that they are even more forcing through these changes and fracking, the idea that the blue wall is going to support the Tories at the next general election, I think you will see a lot of seats down south go to the Lib Dems. I am very, very confident of that, because you haven't got happening this time the great Corbyn scare. They can't go around saying, oh, Keir Starmer's a socialist, and he's going to sort of, take all your stuff. So they haven't got even that to fall back on. And then you're going to have, I think, a lot of Tories either stay home or change their votes over to the Lib Dems. And that is what I think will be the most devastating thing. Because down south is where the heartlands truly are. Who's the Libs leader now? It's still Ed Daley. And I think that the Libs, and especially Daley, they've taken a lot of information about this. I think they've taken a lot of information about those wins from down south, and they are going to apply those lessons. I think they are going to win very big. And I think we are looking at a complete and utter wipeout. Because any general election, they've got almost nothing to come back on. I mean, I guarantee, while I've been on this walk, I guarantee you could go to any newspaper and you can see already angry reactions from Tories about all this. And then we also have to consider, by the way, would the Tories actually seriously consider putting Boris back in as leader? I generally actually have to seriously ask that question, because are they going to be in such an absolute bind that they actually seriously consider putting Boris back in? I think they could. I very seriously think that they could. Just make no mistake, Johnson is still popular. Like, Johnson is still popular. Unbelievably so. And if they want to delve into re-delve into that popularity, then they could. But how damaging is that going to be for them? Because remember, that committee in November, still coming for Boris Johnson. Still coming for him. I think the more it comes for him, the more he just looks even worse. And I think you cannot have him back. I think if the Tories seriously considered that, it would be insane. My guess is bringing Mordaunt in as caretaker. That's what I potentially think as well. That's what's been talked about. That was heavily talked up by several Tories at the Tory conference. You know, this idea of, well, we'll just get rid of Kersey and Sunak, and then we'll just go, okay, instead of having a leadership contest, we're just going to unanimously vote to put in Mordaunt and maybe even Sunak in as Chancellor. So that's also not beyond the realms of possibility of it happening either. But we are in some very interesting times, as they say, you know. Mordaunt is lazier than Johnson. That is true. But that won't matter, to be honest, I think, initially. You know, as long as at least they surround her with competent people. I say competent people. But, you know, competent people in the Tory party are indeed in very short supply these days. Yeah, the membership will have a fit. Yeah, exactly. That will be, well, really, if you look at what's happening now, what is happening now is a consequence. This is an exact consequence of the parliamentary party not liking the candidate that the membership of the party has chosen. Because the membership were very, very clear that they both wanted Liz Truss, but also many of them just didn't even vote. You know, there were a lot of people. If you saw some of the interviews in and around the parliamentary party, there were a lot of people going, you know, if I had the choice, I would have voted for none of the above. So there are a lot of people in the Conservative Party who are looking at their candidates and choices and just going, what's going on here? But this is also part of the problem, that the Tory party has lurched more to the right, that the membership, even though they have gone to the right, have actually elected as MPs people who are more right-wing than they are. This is how we've got this bizarre libertarian coalition in the party, masquerading as conservatives when they're not. They're, you know, and it's, I generally don't know what will happen. I think there could be some quite big moves today. Whether it's today or whether it's tomorrow or maybe even next week, I really couldn't tell you, but I can tell you this now. There are going to be a lot of very angry Tories. A lot of very, very angry Tories out there at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised too soon before you start. It's probably happening right now, to be honest. The airwaves are going to be full today of very angry Tories at the fact that the Bank of England has had to yet again step in. And that's why we're emergency streaming, because this is going to have a massive knock-on effect across the whole economy. And it just really is the question of what's going to break first, I think. Is it going to be Tory nerves? You know, is it going to be Tory nerves? Or is it going to be the economy? Hopefully it's going to be the Tory nerves, because I'm not going to lie, you know, there's a lot of very, very worried economists out there who have said if we go into a recession, or there is a genuine crash in the housing market, the pound crashes, we could be in a situation like we've never seen before. And that is very worrying. That is very, very worrying. And I suppose the good thing is that, you know, at least it'll take the Tories with it, but unfortunately it takes the country with it as well. And that will be a lot of harm done. Nope.
Jesse.
Nope.
Jesse. Here.
It's all right.
Jesse.
Nope. little dog wanting to get in on the action. And that's unfortunately the very sad point. Even though, you know, there'll be a lot of people celebrating the downfall of the Tories as a party. And don't get me wrong, I don't think the Tories will disappear. They'll just mould and mutate themselves into something else, because you are not the most successful political party without having to, you know, adapt and change to the times. And ultimately that is what they will do in one form or another. But you know, we'll be cheering the downfall, but unfortunately it's what happens to the economy. And as we've laid out before, because of Brexit, our economy is far more fragile than any other economy out there. And we've seen this through the pandemic, the energy prices, inflation, all of it hurting us far, far more than any other economy out there. And when you get recessions like this, it does have a massive ripple effect throughout the economy. I mean, we've already got a situation. I don't know if you've noticed in your local towns, but I've really started to notice that since the energy crisis has started kicking in, I've seen a lot of shops now start to close on a Sunday, which is what you would probably never really see before, because shops in the town centre always used to open on a Sunday. But you can walk through, you know, the town centre now, and at least in sort of my town centre, and a lot of the shops will be closed, especially the cafes and restaurants. So I don't know how it is in your local area, but that's one thing I'm noticing, that they are now no longer opening on Sundays. Again, I think it is to for that to happen. And I think when you start to see this, I think you'll see a lot of businesses close, and that'll be, and that's the sad thing. That's the very worrying thing. So, guys, I'll be cheering along with you. Don't worry when the Tories fall. But the problem is what they pull down with it. And unfortunately, it looks like it will be the entirety, potentially, of the UK economy. So, when that does happen, guys, do be aware that maybe you shouldn't be cheering too loudly. And, the temptation will be there. I know it. I understand, guys. I'll feel the same way. But you've got to remember, this situation we're looking at the moment is all about predominantly pensions. And if this does go completely belly up, how many people in the UK could just lose their pensions? That is going to be absolutely devastating to millions of people. And unfortunately, that could be the reality, that while the Tories have completely fallen off, there are millions of people up and down the UK who just don't have a pension anymore, who might have been saving up for years, who might have been just a year away from retirement, and all of a sudden, all that saving, all that effort they've put in to, building that pension, gone, just like that. Why? Because Liz Truss and Kirsty Katang wanted to pull off some grand economic experiment. And we'll play along. We'll get in the pony. And that's unfortunately the case. That's unfortunately He tried to bite me. Trying to have a nibble. Desperately trying to have a nibble at my jacket. But that's the case we're looking at. And, I said it earlier, what breaks first? Tory nerve or the economy? And we've got to hope that the Tory nerve breaks first, because if not, we're in for a very, very, very deep economic problems here in the UK. And even if Labour gets in, how can Labour help solve such deep economic problems and challenges? It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy at all. Even if miraculously Corbyn came in at such an economically dire time, even he would have a struggle and a challenge trying to sort out the UK economy. So, as always, thank you very much for joining me today on this, emergency good morning walk. Like I say, I think I felt as if I had to do it this morning because, to be honest, the news that we've got about another intervention, I think very much dictated that we had to. But as always, like I say, thank you very much for joining me, guys. Like I say, please do remember to hit that like and share button on your way out. Like I say, it massively helps the channel. Also down below, you've got my Patreon page. You've got the one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And there's the YouTube thank you button as well down below. Thank you very much for the super chat as well. Tilly the Coder, I think it is, who sent that in. So thank you very much for that, for your support on that. And yeah, thank you very much, guys, to all the support you show. Even if you do just hit the like and share button, it's very, very much appreciated. And as always, guys, we'll see you probably tomorrow, because I will be doing a live stream tomorrow evening, probably going over what happened in PMQs, and certainly going over the reaction of what probably these very angry Tories are doing today. So have a good day, guys, wherever you are, or good night, depending where you are in the country, or in the world, shall we say. Have a good one, and we'll see you all very soon.